Yeah, I just now see that you give offers your father's yard sign.
That's right.
I have
That's right.
a Pesach story.
So today's the yard supposedly of Ravina. Ravina, who's Messiah in the Shas. So basically, the Shas was sealed after Ravina's death because Ravina was the one who made the Shas. So Ravina's yard today. I believe it's also the yard of Ruvain, the birthday and the yard of the Shevet Ruvain. That's also the yard of a person who we don't want to remember. There was a reincarnation of the Shabtai movement in the 1700s. A guy by the name of Frank. Oh, you've heard of him? For Jacob Frank? They're still Frankists today. And their belief is, and that's why they were put in the Cherem, that the way to bring Mashiach is to be over every possible affair in the Torah possible. In other words, we want to, I don't know if there's logic to it, but his logic was the Rebbeinu Shalom now, and he made a bracha mater isurim. He's going to make a bracha mater isurim every day. And so there's a lot of people do a lot of affairs. What he would do is he would arrange get-togethers that today might be called swingers parties. So one of the areas in which he wanted to create the tremendous spirits was Binyan's Nus, because he had this mishagas that this is when they bring Mashiach. Right. So the Gedolim put him in Cherem. He was formally put into Cherem. And what happened is these people who were formally put into Cherem, it wasn't just that they don't get an aliyah in Hasidic shuls. It was you couldn't rent them houses, you couldn't do business with them, and the Goyim weren't very good to the Yidden either. So someone who's in Cherem basically would starve to death because he had no one to do business with, he had nowhere to go. So what they ended up doing, these guys as well, is they go to the church and they tell the church, "We need you to take us in." And the church says, "No problem, we'll take you in. All we need you to do is to convert to Christianity and say testimony that the Jews use our blood to make their matzahs, and then we'll have a deal, and then we'll kill you anyway." So and that's what he did. And they created a whole bunch of blood libels, and supposedly he called up the Rabbanim he reached out to the Rabbanim who put him in the Cherem and said, "You went after my blood, now I'm going to go with your blood." So he was a horrible person, and he led a horrible movement. But Ravina, who finished the Shas, and Ruvain, those were very chashuv people, and Schusim Yogan Aleinu. So what's your Pesach Kron story?
My Pesach Kron story is my father got sick over Shabbos. So I went into conniption when I heard, because maybe COVID, this and that, I got all nervous. I told my wife to go up to Baptist lawn to
spell
my grandfather, and then we have to go up to Party Shalom. I need the whole morning with her. I said, "What are you doing?" So I pulled her up there with me, and just as I'm entering Party Shalom, and I'm standing there on the road, who calls us up? Nancy Magda. And Nancy Magda says, "How you doing? What's going on?" Uncle Shuli actually was also in the hospital, so we say over Shabbos he had some cold or something. So I said, "Hey, you wouldn't believe it, Nancy Magda, but I'm right here by your mother's caver." She says, "You're there by my mother's caver? Wow, you knew that it was my mother's yard sign?" I said, "No, I didn't know. I had no idea."
So that's the Pesach Kron story. It came on your
We stood right
Gewaltig.
the caver, and she said, "Please daven by Uncle Shuli's mother, Hendel, which is right behind your grandmother.
That's right.
And you can also daven by Tootsie, who is right in front, right? And then daven, it's you give a little kiss, like your grandmother's yard sign. You're right there."
So today's your grandmother's. Yesterday was your grandmother's.
Yesterday, we have it there.
So the Shabbos should have an aliyah. Dr. Hela Gemara. We have a new Mishnah. We're getting into Geschmack Sugis now. We're getting into Sveikis, like real meat and potato Sugis. Dr. Hela Gemara. Ein Chosheshin. This is the Mishnah that's a very important ingredient in Pesach. Because Pesach, people can get so carried away with their chumras, they can become OCD. And they need a psychologist to sort out their paranoias of where they might find chametz. So this Mishnah breaks all that. Ein chosheshin, do not worry. Shema gira chulda mibayis l'bayis. So Rashi learns, imagine you made b'dikas chametz in one room, then you go to the next room. And now you're paranoid. Maybe after I left the room that I was boidik, a chulda came and slept chametz from a different room back in there. And then you basically go around in circles and you'll never finish being boidik. So the Mishnah says, take a deep breath and don't worry about it. In choshin shemagir cholda mibayit b'makam l'makam. The imkain, if you're going to be worried about that, then once you're paranoid, you'll never ever finish with your paranoia. So just do your stuff, do your thing, the mitzvah bedika, bittel, and be done with it. Don't make yourself crazy.
It's actually a half a comment.
Okay.
I heard from Suli Boaz.
Right.
He told me yesterday that Rabbi Akiva Eger speaks out the word did and came,
Right.
Ramish,
Right.
and he says, and Rabbi Akiva says that it's very odd for the Mishnah to speak to use
In Aramaic.
Ramish.
Right. Oh, okay.
Why? I don't know. That's what happened.
I hear. So Toshis asks, why is this Mishnah telling us a chiddush? Don't we already know that from our Mishnah? If it's a place that you don't have chametz, and you normally don't bring chametz in, you don't need bedika. If you had to worry about a cholda, then that halacha wouldn't be possible. So once the first Mishnah already told us that if there's no chametz, so you don't have to worry about it, we know you don't have to worry about the choldas bringing things around. We could have learned that those wine cellars that you don't normally use from in your Suda or any other area that you normally don't use from during the Suda are sealed in such a way that they're mouse proof or bardalis proof, they're chulda proof. I remember once drilling a hole in a wall of someone's home who was an elderly almana, and she said that make sure that your hole is sealed up so well because no house in the entire world is big enough to accommodate both me and a mouse. So Mamelis, you should be careful. So those places are protected. But here in the house, even though it's not perfectly protected, once you're budgeted, you don't have to worry. Zoktamar, Taima, the loy chazina, the shakal. The only reason why we're saying you don't have to be paranoid is because you didn't see a chol to come and take away some chametz. What if you saw that a rash of chazina shavi also lakan? If you saw that a chulda did come, you actually witnessed it, it happened, then chashinon shema adainu kan, the tzarech live like. So if you're being boidik and then you see a mouse run through, now you're stuck. Now you do have to worry. Why would I worry even if I saw a weasel run through with some chametz? Why can't you assume that the chulda that took the food is going to eat it up and it's not going to leave it for you? The chulda's job isn't to harass us. The chulda's job is to find and eat food. He's not looking to leave it there. So did we not learn this concept that you can assume that you can assume that things are going to be taken care of because the chulda eats it up. Where do you see that? Medura sa'akum tameim. Dwellings of goyim are tamei. So if a goy lives in the house is considered tamei. And Rashi says the reason why it's considered tamei because you're afraid his wife or his mistress had a miscarriage, and their corpse is buried there, and there's a machlokes. If there is a din tuma even on goyish corpse, midrabanan, there's a machlokes if it's matama ba'oil or if it's matama madbu masa, but there's definitely a tuma on there, and therefore you always have to assume that there could be a miscarried fetus there. So madur sa'akim tameim. The chama yishiv a mother, the yehei a mother tzarich badika. At what point, how long does the guy have to live in a place in order that we should have this chashash already that there's a fetus there? Even though he's not married, because there are other ways for him to have a fetus there, even if he's not married, because Rashi says that goyim engage in relations with women even if they're not married. Surprise, surprise. So I'll call upon them. They do ask, what's up is 40 days, because that's how long it takes for there to be a vlad. However, why aren't you choshish that he had his wife was already pregnant when they moved into the house? Rashi says the shayla zat. I don't know the teretz, but for some reason they're not goyzer until the goy lives there already for 40 days, and the fetus that would have been abandoned in the house somewhere would have come after he moved into the house. Now, here's the important line. Any place where a chulda or a chazir can get around, there we would not worry that there's a fetus there. So you see clearly that whenever there's a chulda and a chazir, you're not choshish that it'll just move something around. You actually can assume with confidence that it's going to eat it up completely and eliminate it. So in our case, even if you saw that there was a chulda that took some bread, took some chametz when you were boidik, why do I have to be worried about it? Why can't I assume that it was completely eaten up? You have to assume that this chulda is on a carb-free diet. So bib basar loy mishayra, he's going to eat up the protein. All the protein he's for sure going to eat up. But belechem mishayra, he might leave over from the chametz. Could be he's trying to control his carb intake. So memela, a chazir or a chulda, when you're talking about a human corpse, for sure you don't have to worry that the chazir ate it all up. But bread, once you saw a chulda with chametz, you have to be choshed that he didn't eat it all up. He left it somewhere, and now you have to be boidik again.
I have two observations. Why is it that we say chulda and a chazir? A chulda is much smaller than a chazir. Once we say a chulda, we already know a chazir. Chazir is a big.
I guess that's the mitzias. I guess the mitzias was they had pigs running around in their houses.
You're always saying that a chulda, which is a weasel, right? Wherever he can go, we don't have to be choshid. And obviously a chazir, which is one big.
But I guess that's the mitzias. The mitzias was that people that yeah.
Okay. Then the other thing that you mentioned, and this is very, very strange to me, but you mentioned that the fetus, this navel or whatever, is buried. But if it's buried, then the chazir and the chulda are not going to get it. Which means the Gemara said that
Rashi says they should cover in the flame b'vatayim.
So they do bury it. So if they bury it,
but how do you know they can't dig up after it? Who said they bury 6 feet deep? They just put it there under the ground. It's obviously in such a way where a chazir can get to it. Yeah. So, Amar Rava, Haimai. Let's think about this. Bishlama Hasam, Bishlama. Why I understand why, but a fetus, you assume that the chazir ate it up, because Bishlama Hasam Emer Hava Emer Lo Hava. We don't know for sure that there was a fetus buried there. The whole chashash to begin with is only a suffix. Maybe there was a tumah there, and therefore you could say Hava, even if in fact there was a fetus. We could rely on the fact that the chazir or the chulda ate it up. Here we're talking in the case of Vadai, the chasina the shakel. Our whole chashash here is only if you saw the chulda run through the room with a piece of chametz. So we know for sure that there was iser mi yemer dachalte. Who said there you can be soimich on the fact that the chulda ate it up, where you know for sure that there was a problem. Have a savaku vadai. Vadai, there was chametz there. Suffolk if the chametz was eliminated, and you should say in Suffolk moitzimid vadai. But by the case of the fetus, it's Suffolk the Suffolk. It's a Suffolk if there was a fetus there, and even if there was, we can rely on the fact that the chazir ate it up. So Dr. Gemara, the ain't Suffolk moitzimid vadai. You're making an assumption that Suffolk is not moitzimid vadai. Don't be so sure about that. But Tanya we learned chaver shemes. So we know a chaver is someone who is so sure, who we're so sure that he would always be misakin his payers. He would never allow his payers to be in a situation where they were not masukid and someone can eat from them and be over an isser of teva. We had this brayso a couple of days ago, and he left a storehouse full of pears. Even if they were just became tevel that day, meaning he just completed their malacha that day. You can assume without a doubt that they're mesukin. And there's a machlokes rishon about this. What happens if he became incapacitated? If the chaver was incapacitated, meaning he couldn't speak, he couldn't communicate, and then he died. Could you assume that he was mesakin the pairs? So certain rishonim will hold, no, the cheskos chaver is that he would be mesakin his pairs, and if he couldn't for whatever reason, he would make sure to communicate it so that no one would be over. So therefore, if he became incapacitated, then you can't rely on the cheskos chaver. But there are those Rishonim who learned that the cheskos chaver independent of anything. And even if he became incapacitated, you can assume without a doubt that he was masakin the tfuah before he became incapacitated. In those cases, in the case of the Talmud Chacham, it was for sure tevel. You have fruit in a warehouse, you have wheat in a warehouse, without a doubt, it was tevel vadai. V'savik musarin, v'savik loy musarin. We're not sure. We didn't see. We haven't verified with certainty that the chaver took the meiser, took the trumas, was masakin the tefua. The ga'asi safik umoitimi devadai, and nevertheless, we paskin chaver shemeis avhilim b'nei yaiman harei mecheskos musakodim. So the suffix of the chaver being masakin the tefua will resolve the vadai status of tevel that it had. So Gemara, that's not a raya from there, because that's not a subject to the vadai. Hasam vadai uvadaihu. The vadai ma'asri. We're not just saying misofik the chaver was probably ma'asrit. Rather, we have it's considered 100% verified. In fact, that the chaver was masakin the tvua. Could you Rabbi Chanina Chuzah, like Rabbi Chanina Chuzah said? Rabbi Chanina Chuzah chazok al chaver she'ein moitzi mitachas yadai davar she'ein masukin. It's a chazak on the chaver. That's a vadai. It's the status of a vadai that the chaver was for sure misakinus tefua. The boy is saying, or you might ask another question. Safik b'savaku. Who said it's a vadai that these pairs require tikkun? Who said it's a vadai that these pairs were in fact tevel? Maybe Dilma meikara amur deloit tefili. Maybe they were never tevel. How could you have pairs that are in your house ready to be eaten that are not tevel? Kiraboishia. In order for something, for payers to be mechuyev midaraisa in trumas and maisrus, in order for something to be tevel, two things have to happen. A is the payers have to have their gemar malacha done. They have to be completely processed, and after they're completely processed, they have to be brought in to your storehouse. If they were brought into your storehouse or your home unprocessed, even if you process them after midaraisa, it does not have a status of tevel. So Rabbi Yosy gave you an eitzah how you can get around taking trumas and maisrus. Mayrim adam al tuvasai. A person could use chachma, a loophole on his tuah. Umachnisa b'moitchalah. He'll take them into his storehouses before they're threshed and winnowed. Kidei shetahei behem toyachelas. Now the halach is midirabanan they asked you to eat these pears that you had a loophole on. They asked you to eat it with their kva. And they said that feeding something to your animal is never called with their kva. So you can feed these to your animal without any question. A person could only eat it derech arai once in a while, but he can't eat it properly. But this is a way for you at least to bring in produce, and then you could serve them to your behema. Upatur min hamaiser. So therefore, since it's possible that this occurred, so you don't even know for sure that there's a chiv meiser, therefore you can rely that the chaver was masakin the payers. So everybody should ask the obvious question: is a chaver going to pull such a stunt? A chaver is someone who wants to do the mitzvah properly. So why would a chaver bring it in the back door to avoid trumas and maisrus?
Even more than that, the Gemara somewhere else says, the told me that the Gemara says that Chasidim Harishonim would bring in their tevel there through the front door.
But that could be the kind of mitzvah.
They should be mechuyev in maisrus. This is the Gemara.
So the Rishonim say that here you have a chaver, when you're being summoned a chaver, the chaver's not around. So he probably knew there was an issue there. So since he wanted to avoid any chance of an isser, he figured first let me bring it in the back door. First let me do it in a different way, so at least there's no chash d'oraisa. He's trying to minimize the risk as much as possible. So it could be if he's confident and he knows he'll be able to be masakin it right away, sure, he'll bring it in the front door and he'll want to be kind of mitzvah midaraisa. But here you have a chaver who ended up disappearing, right? Because we're looking for the chazaka to be materit. So it could be he knew that it wasn't so sure he would be able to take the meiser, so maybe he bedavki brought it in that way to try to minimize and mitigate any problem. So it's not a kasha why he would do it. So zok the Gemara weiter. Vein tzofik moitzemi devadai. Are you telling me? Vein tzofik moitzemi devadai. Latanya we learned. Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Ma'isa b'shevchasei shel matzik echad b'rimon. There was a shivcha of a matzik echad. What is a matzik? Rashi says matzik is a stickle troublemaker. Is it Rashi here? No, it's not Rashi. The architect, it was an oppressor. It was like a tough boss. And he had a shivcha. And this happened in Rimoin. She'atila nefel lebar. She miscarried and she threw a nefel into the bar. Now Rashi says, Tosha says that mikan ein lo yechiach the shivcha matama beleda. You can't bring a rye from here that a shivcha is tamei leda, because on our base we're going to see the discussion is the what type of tumah she has is a zachar or is it a nekeva, because maybe the shemesh shel gevirta haya, maybe she threw out her maybe she threw the nefel of her balas abayis, and that was for sure a Jewish woman. So there's a shaila of tumah here. So let's see the story. She threw a nefel into the bar, I guess to bury it. Now we know the halacha is that if a woman gives birth, we just learned it last week. If it's a zachar, for 7 days she's tamei, and then for the next 33 days, any dam she sees is dam toyer. Of course, we don't fear like that nowadays, but that's how it was midoraisa. On the other hand, if it's a nekeva, if the child is a female, then she's tamei for 14 days, and then for 66 days she has yemei tahira. Any dam that she sees will be tar. So naturally, if there was a miscarriage, it would be important for the woman to know, is it a zachar or is it a nekeva? So they sent the kohen, the hated boy, to go look at this fetus. Leida im zacharu im nekevahi. He needed to determine what it was so that the woman will know her status l'gabe tumah. So right away, Tosfos asks, what business does a kohen have going to look at a fetus? He's going to become tamei. A kohen's not allowed to make himself tamei. So why would he go look?
I thought they said it's your problem. You go fix it.
Why is it the kohen's problem?
Because he's the one who has to be worried about being tamei.
Well, no, the woman needs to know if she's tamei, if she's also to her husband.
So that's what.
Yeah. So what does Rashi say? Leida im zachem nekeva. Why would the kohen do it? The kohen curve, either the kohen was related, so he was closely involved, so he had to go check it out. He was their local Orthodox rabbi. He had to check it out. Oy mibnei abayis haya v'shalchu sham, and they sent him there lahagid leimoy, to tell the mother of the child or of the miscarriage of the fetus mativoy. V'tavchin bein tumas v'taharis zachar limei tumas v'taharis nekeva. We simply needed to report to her what her status is, l'gabe tumah. V'loy nizker oisei kohen al asharas lenefesh leitame. He was a family member. They needed to know. There was a little bit of panic, and he forgot. He forgot that he wasn't allowed to go to look. They hit his by the bar, and he went to look in the bar to see if this was a zachar or a nekeva. And when he looked in the bar, he didn't see anything at all. There was nothing there. They knew they threw a nefel into the bar, but when he looked, there was no nefel there. And therefore, so now he has a question: is he tamei or not? May he truma. V'tiharua mimal ala mace. Normally, if you're standing over a mace, we say, if there's no cover on the mace, we say tumah b'kas v'oila ad l'rakia. The tumah goes straight up. So if you lean over and you're in that line of tumah that goes straight up, you become tamei. So the kohen now thought he became tamei, but he did not see any fetus there. So what do they pass before him? They asked the shaila by the chachamim, is he tamei or not? V'tiharua, they said v'tiharuhu. They paskin that this kohen will be tar. He was mahil, or he potentially was mahil over a mace. Why? There's either chulda weasels there or bardalis. The article does not touch bardalis; it just says bardalis. But Rabbi Elvin said it means a bear.
Bear.
That's what he said. I don't know where he got it from, but there's a chulda or a bardalis mitzuyin sham. There could be chuldas or bardalis in this bar, and therefore we'll assume they took it away. Shechulda or bardalis mitzuyin sham up to Rashi. V'sasam v'stam chulda uvardalis poitech tabachu. So we're choshed that it pulled it into its lair. It had a den over there, and chances are there's a pesach tabachu. What that means is if a mace is in an oil and there's one tefach of airspace between the mace and the roof, that creates an oil which will trap the tumah in. But if a mace is in a covered area, but there's less than a tefach between the top of the mace and the cover of a box or the cover of whatever he's in, that does not constitute an oil, and it would still be tumah b'keres vayla. So Rashi is telling us that the normal dens that a chulda or a bartless has a high enough ceiling that if the fetus was dragged into it, it would have been an oil and it would have contained the tumah and it would not have been by kas, by las, so the kohen would have been protected. So Dr. Gemara, the Vadayatila, for sure there was a fetus there, the Safak Garu, the Safak Garu, and it's only a Shaila if he shaita, and it's a Safak if at that point the Bardalis or the Chulda had already vacated the fetus into a protected oil or not. The Kazi Safak, and the Safak as to whether or not this fetus was pulled into an oil is Moitzi Midevadai, and says that even though Vadai we know there was once Tuma in this bar, Misafik will say that the Kohen is not Tamei and will assume that the fetus was dragged away into a den. Zakt Gemara, no, you don't have a right from there. Loi Tema She'etila Nefel Bar. Don't say that she was Matala Nefel in the bar and there was a Vadai Tuma there to start out with. Elema Shapila Kamin Nefel Bar. Something came out of her. She had a miscarriage, something came out of her. But we don't know if it has the status of a fetus or not. So therefore, Vavisofik, the whole Tuma there was only a suffix. Something fell into the bar. We don't even know if it was a Vlad. And therefore, the whole thing was a suffix, and that's why you could be soymich on the suffix that the Chulda or the Bardalis pulled it away. So Vavisofik, Vasofik. Frektimor, how could you say that? It's the Brisa says, V'haleda im zocher im nekevi. The reason why the coin was sent was to see if it's a zocher and a keva. So it's mashma that we know for sure it was a Vlad. The whole thing that we need to figure out is if it's a zachar and a keva. But it was for sure a vlad, so there was a vadai tuma there. V'haleda im zachar im nekeva hikatani. So this is what the brisa means. Leda im ruach apila im nefel apila. First, we wanted the kohen to assess whether bechalal this is considered a vlad at all, whether there's any tuma at all. V'im timtza loimer nefel apila, and if in fact the kohen assesses that this is a vlad and it would trigger tumas leda, then leda im zacharu im nekevehi. But really, the whole thing was a suffix. How developed it has to be before, I'm not sure. But there's other things that come out of a woman that are not necessarily a vlad at all, right? The placenta has no tumah on it, so he wanted to see what was there. I don't know exactly what the Metzias is. Could disintegrate? I'm not sure.
Yosy.
Yes.
Can we not say that it's not even a suffix guru? Because it's the fact is it's not there anymore. So it's much more than just a suffix.
Because when the Kohen looked down, he didn't see anything.
Right. So yeah, we knew she threw it in, but Lamais, it's not there.
I hear. I'm just like thinking the Kohen's looking down into a bar, peeking out over the bar. Just because he didn't see it, does that mean it wasn't there? I'm sorry, did he have a flashlight? Like I'm not sure. But it's a good aura. The fact is he didn't see it there. It's a good aura. It's a very good aura. The boy says to tomorrow, Vadai Vadahu. Because Kivan, the Chulda, Ubardlas Matsuyin Sham, Vadai Gururua Bahai Shaita. You could say it's a Vadai, because for sure, Rashi says, Muchzoken Bekach. We know without a doubt that surely the Chulda or the Bardalis would have pulled the Vlad away. It's not comparable to our Mishnah, the Katani, Hachazina Chashina. Even if you can't rely with certainty that the animal would have eaten it all up, but for sure it would have dragged it into its den, even if it was going to eat it later. And the moment it's not there in the open face of the bar, we don't need to worry that the Kohen became tummy. But Shlomo, your kasha is good. The Kohen didn't see anything. So why isn't that verification? In fact, there was no tumah. So Zok to Gemara, maybe you could say, so even though it might still be there, it's possible that they didn't eat it up, but without a doubt, it's not there anymore. So what do you ask him?
Maybe we could tell Shlomi that just like
Shlomi, do you hear Chaim Tzvi talking to you? Okay.
Shlomi, maybe we could say that just like in the parsha with Yosy in the bar, and they weren't able to see if they saw that if Rashi tells us that there were akrovim and snakes and this, then why did the Why did the Shvatim throw them in? It was a Vadai Misa, right? So the Rishonim actually tell us there that they weren't able to see those Akrovim.
Uh-huh. So the Chashim and the Krovim that were there, the brothers didn't see.
Right.
Because you can't see down when you're looking
You
for the
can't see
top.
down. So just like you weren't able to see down in that bar, you weren't able to see down in this bar.
So that wasn't willful blindness.
Right.
They wouldn't have thrown him in if they would have known. Okay. Fact the Gemara. Umi Amrinan. Do we say Ein Choshishin Shema Gora Chulda? Do we say that you're not Choshish? Vakatani Seifa, what we learned in the Seifa, Masha Mishayer Yanichene Betzina. I'm sorry, we're middle of a class now. I'm not able to talk right now. I'm sorry. Wait till 7 o'clock. We'll be happy to help you. Do you say that you're not choishish, that a chulda could have moved chametz around? Vakatani Seifa, the Seifa of the Brisa says, Masha Mishayer, what you do leave over, Yanichenu Betzina. So the chametz that you found, that you left over, that you're saving for tomorrow, what should you do with that chametz? Yanuchenu Betzina. You should hide it in a protected area. You better hide it well, because if it disappears, then you might need a badik again, because that would be a sign that some of your chametz went missing. So you obviously are choishish. That a chulda will take it, because if not, why do you have to protect the chametz? It depends on when you're standing. On the 13th day, which is 2 days before Pesach, where there's plenty of chametz around, there loy mitznah. There you don't have to be worried about a chulda hiding something, because the chulda knows that in a Jewish home there's a lot of food to be eaten. You don't have to worry. If anybody looks at the rats in Borough Park in Brooklyn, they're fat because they go on a Sunday, on Shabbos, and they have Kanayin Har, beautiful, beautiful sudas. Nebuch, the rats in the Goyish neighborhoods, they're oskadaret, they're hungry, they're starving, they don't have anything. So they know on the 13th day it's party time because there's so much chametz around and they can take as much as they want. So like the matzna, eat, drink, and be merry. We don't need to worry about saving for the winter. But Barba also, where they know that chametz is going to become very scarce, they're going to ask, what happened over here? All of the Eden have split the ugeshmat, and now there's no more food in their garbage. This guy tavur, right? Barba also, they don't put it away. So when the Brisa says Masha Mishaya and the that's on day 14, because there the mice and the rats and all the rodents are going to take things and hide them away because they don't know when they'll have food next. But on the 13th day, you don't have to worry. Frag the Gemara, how smart are these rodents? Are these chuldas? Do they have human intelligence that they know based on the calendar day when they have to put away, when the Jews are going to have food in their garbage cans and when not? The Yada Ha'idna, the Ha'idna are Pesach. They'll know that today's the 14th day, and there won't be any food around till the night when they're going to bake chametz. And therefore, and therefore on the 14th day, they're going to know to wolf away, to hide away the food so that they can preserve it. It doesn't make sense to say that. So how could you say such an answer? What it means is, the reason why you have to protect the chametz that you set aside, that you found, is not because you're worried that it'll come. It's not because you're worried that a chulda might come and take it, because we don't have to worry about that, the Mishnah tells us. Rather, the problem is, you don't have to be worried, stamazoi, that a chulda is going to take it. But what if you actually witness a chulda come and take? Now you do have to worry already. So that's why the chametz that you find, you should protect and put it away so that so it doesn't happen that a chulda actually does come and take it. Because once a chulda actually does come, now you've got trouble. Zok tehele gemara vayter. Tanya kavasa de Rava. We actually have a raya, a brisa that says like Rava, that the reason why you have to protect your chametz is not because stomachs or you're worried a chulda might come. But if a chulda actually comes and takes something, then you got a problem and you're going to have to be boidik again. And where do you see this? Because it says in the brisa, Heroitza lechal chametz acher bedika. If somebody wants to eat chametz after bedika, ketzad yasa, what should he do? What should he do with the chametz that he sets aside after the bedika? Masha mishayer yanichenu betzina. The chametz that he leaves over from the bedika, he should protect. Shaloi tavai chulda betita b'fanenu, so that we shouldn't witness that a chulda will actually come. Because if a chulda actually comes and takes food, then be a torch bedika acharov, then he's going to have to be boik again. But if you don't see a chulda come, avada, you don't have to worry. Rav Mori Omar, Gzerei Shem Yaniach Eser Yimtzat Heisha. The reason why you have to protect your chametz once you did the bedika and you have it set aside is because we're afraid you might put away 10 pieces of bread that you find, and then when you're ready to go burn it, you'll only find 9 pieces. Now you're in trouble because now you have to go find that piece that was missing. And there are those who say that it's this Rav Mori that's the makar of hiding 10 pieces. Now we're getting into one of the most famous sugyas of Suffolk, and that's called that kol kavua kamechsa mechsa uve parush hoichen acher roiv. So we'll see that in a Gemara, beautifully illustrated. Teisha tziburin shal matzah. Imagine you have 9 piles of matzah, the echad shal chametz, and 1 pile of chametz. The asa achbar v'shakol, and we know a mouse came and took 1 piece of bread, but we don't know which piece of bread it took. We don't know if this akbar took a piece of matzah and then we have nothing to worry about, or ichamet shakol, or if it's the chametz and now we're going to have to be boidik again because who knows where this animal left that chametz. Zok to the Gemara, hainu teisha chanuyos. This would be like the case of teisha chanuyos. So you might think, if roiv or the piles were matzah, so why don't we assume that what the akbar took was matzah? Zok to Gemara, you don't treat it with roiv. There you have to be choishish. Pirish v'asa akbar v'shakal. What if a piece of matzah was found loose somewhere else, and the akbar took that loose piece of matzah? Hainu seifa. That's the seifa of that brisa where you actually would say that piece that the akbar took was from the roiv and it was matzah, and we don't need to worry about it. So let's see the Mishnah. Itnan teisha chanuyos. If there were there were 9 stores in an area in a plaza. Kulon moichin basar shchuta. There are 9 stores that sold kosher meat. The achas moicheres basar nevela, and one store had a big sign on it that said basar basar, and it served treifa meat. And someone went into the store. Someone went to the store not focusing on where he was. And he bought meat and he didn't know which store the meat that he purchased came from. So you don't say that the chances is that he went into one of the kosher stores because it's right. Rather, you say sveikei aser. Why do you say sveikei aser in this case? Rashi tells us that in the Gemara Ksubis, it tells us an interesting halacha. What if you throw a stone into a group of people, and there's a group of people that 9 of them are Yidden and 1 of them is non-Jewish, and you throw a rock into the group and it kills a Jew. I'm sorry, you don't know what kills. It kills somebody. So the halacha is, you don't say that he's mechuyev. You don't say that he's mechuyev because he killed a Jew. Rather, since his stone went into a group of people, we say it's 50-50, and it might not have killed a Jew, and they wouldn't be chayiv. So that's where you see the halacha that kol kavua kamechsa mechsa. Anytime you went into the suffix, and rather you didn't just find something lying around, we say that it's a 50-50 suffix. Uvenimtza. But if you just found something loose on the street, then halach acher haroiv, then you follow the roiv, you say it was a roiv. So on the other hand, if there was a group of people, 9 of them were Yidden, and 1 of them was a goy, and then one of those people wandered away from the group, and you killed that person, there you will be mechuyev because that was considered parish, and you'll say that the person that was parish from the group was probably from the right, was probably a Yid. So the same thing would apply in our case. If you have 9 chanuyos and you went into the chanus, then we say it's a 50-50 chance, or the same thing with our chametz. If you had 9 piles of matzah and 1 of chametz, and a mouse took from somewhere, that's considered kavua, and it's a 50-50 chance that it's chametz, and therefore you'd have to be baidik. Again, on the other hand, if a piece of chametz separated from these piles of chametz, or in the case of the stores, if you found a piece of meat on the floor, meaning it's separated from the stores, it's just on it by itself on the ground, you can assume it came from the roiv. So let's see this again. You have 9 piles of matzah v'echad shel chametz. V'also Achbar and the mouse came to Shakal and took from one of these piles. We don't know which pile it took from. That'll be similar to the case of Teisha Chanuyas that we'll see in a second. Pirish v'also Achbar v'shakal. But if a piece of bread was just found in the area, but we don't know where the piece of bread came from. When I say bread, it can mean matzah bread as well, and you don't know if it came from the matzah or from the chametz, v'shakal, and the mouse took that piece of bread that was lying around, hanu sefer, that would be similar to the second case of the brayso. There's 9 stores in the plaza. Kulan moichin basar shchuta. 9 out of the 9 sell kosher meat. V'achas mecheres basar nevela, and 1 sells treifa meat. Man, you walked in, you wandered into one store, you weren't focused where you were, and you purchased meat from them. And then when you come out, you don't remember which store you bought from. Sveka yasser, you don't go basar roiv, that meat's going to be usher. It's a 50-50 chance. But if you just found meat on the floor in the plaza and you don't know where it came from, that's parish, it's separated from the stores. Halach achar roiv, you can go basar roiv. Shnei tzibur, what if you have 2 piles? Echad shel matzah, ve'echad shel chametz. You have 1 pile of matzah and 1 pile of chametz. Ulefneim shnei batim, and in front of them are 2 homes. Echad badik, 1 house was kosher lePesach already. The achad sheini badik, and the other house was not kosher lePesach. Ve'azu shnei achbarim, and 2 mice came. Echad, this is a mice shehoya. Echad shakal matzah, 1 of these mice took from the matzah pile. Ve'echad shakal chametz, and 1 of the mice took from the chametz pile. V'lo yadinan, and we don't know high la high aisle, the high la high aisle. We don't know which mouse went into which house, so we don't know if the chametz went into the chametz and the matzah went into the matzah, which would require no additional action, or if the chametz went into the matzah and the matzah went into the chametz, then you have to rebuy both homes. That would be similar to another case that we learned with two boxes. Now we learned. If you have 2 boxes, achas shel chulin, 1 was chulin, the achas shel truma, and 1 was truma. V'lefneim, and in front of these 2 boxes were shnei soin, 2 piles of produce. Achad shel chulin, 1 was chulin, v'achas shel truma, and 1 was truma. V'navlu elu l'toich elu, and the soin fell in to the boxes. So the halacha is mutarin. You'll say that they're both mutar. Shani Omer will say chulin l'soich chulin naflu. The chulin fell to the chulin. Utruma l'soich truma naflu, and you'll say that the truma fell into the truma. Zokt Rashi v'naflu elu l'toich elu hasoyin, the piles of produce l'soich elu akupos fell into these boxes. V'yadu alanu, and we know for sure shal echad nafal bazu ve'echad bazu. We know for sure it's 1 to 1. Ve'ein yadua eizeh bazu ve'eizeh bazu, but we don't know which box got the chulin and which box got the truma. So what you say is arei mutarin. You say peirosh shal kupos hachulon mutarin lazar kivat tchila. The box that had in it chulin will consider it still chulin. Afilu ein bekupa kedei lahalos hasa be'echrumeya. Now, in the event that truma fell in to chulin, you would need 101 times of chulin to be mevatel the truma that fell in. Even if you don't have that here, we'll still say that the chulin is still mutter. Shanu Ayman, we say chulin l'tech chulin naflu. We're going to assume that the chulin fell into the chulin, and therefore the box that was chulin is still mutter to eat from. Alma, you see from here, talin l'kula heter beheter v'isur. You see from this brisa that when you have such a suffix, you are told l'kula that the heter went into the heter and the isur went into the isur. Even though you can argue that exactly the opposite occurred. Hachanami, so to here, when it comes to the 2 houses, and in one house matzah entered, and in one house chametz entered, l'kula talinon, we will say l'kula And we will say, Hachametz nichnas l'she'enei baduk. The chametz went into the enei baduk, which you have to be baduk anyway. V'amat lebaduk, and therefore you don't have to make a new bedika. So
What's-
Zok
What is this svara of saying that the chulin fell into the chulin? I mean, why do we do that?
I'm not sure yet. I'm hoping that it's going to become clear when we learn weiter. I don't know. I don't know the reason because you don't even have a right over here. Why should
It's not logical, to make that assumption.
Well, it depends which house you live in. If you live in the house that you're voidic, it'll be a little bit more logical to you to make that assumption.
From here we see that the Rebbe prepares day by day, not by month by month.
That's right. That's right.
Yosy, what's the classic case of a Sfeika d'Oraisa l'chumra? Because it seems to me every time there's a suffix, we're trying to get out of the suffix and finding a way. Mendel the mouse took it here. Mickey the mouse took it here. What about Sfeika d'Oraisa l'chumra?
Akiva, first of all, when you're asking about Mendel the mouse is a very not Lubavitcher concept.
Why? He's the one who's taking the matzah to bring it to somebody else. Mickey the mouse is stealing it.
Very good China. So all of your shalos are very relevant, and because of that, I want to learn the Tosfos Hainu Teshach, at least the beginning of it, because this is very relevant. Because the shaila here is, if chametz is a shaila of a deraisa, how could you be makel? So Zok Tosfos Hainu Teshach. So this is the case of the original case where a mouse took from one of the piles. There we say it's 50-50. Zok Tosfos Lafish Masha Pirsha Kundros. Because Rashi learns this whole shaila was leading bedika, right? He said the shaila was we have to make a bedika again if the mouse, since we don't know which one the mouse took and it went into the house, you have to make a new bedika. So that's a Rashi learns. It's a question of bedika. Zok Tosfos loyne here elari. I don't like to learn that the shaila is leading bedika, because if that was the case, the heichi maisi raya mitesha chanuyos. How could the Gemara bring a raya l'gabe bedika chometz from the case of tesha chanuyos? By Tesha Chanuyos, it's a subject deraisa. You're going to be eating tray for the meat. That's a deraisa. So it's logical to say that was lina lechumra. But for hacha, the shaila of making a bedika's chametz is only required midrabanan, because midaraisa you're mevat your chametz anyway. Remember, we learned the whole purpose of bedika's chametz is only because if you find something on Pesach that's like the shmaka Danish, we're afraid you're going to eat it. But really, you're mevatlet. So it's only a shaila of a derabanan. So therefore, so since it's only a drabanan, the halal, why are we comparing this to a shaila b'deraisa? I understand if you eat. That's right, but the chiyuv to do bedika, is only a chiyuv midrabanan.
But are we worried about a deraisa?
The reason why every derabanan is because you're worried about a deraisa. So you can't tell me that every subject Rabbanan should go to Chumrah because the Rabbanan are worried about the Raisa. The mitzvah to do bedika is mandated midir Rabbanan.
What is the difference between here and the meat? By the meat, we're worried about eating tray for meat, and here we're worried about eating clothes.
No, by the meat we're worried that you'll eat tray for meat.
Right.
But here we're worried you won't make a bedika. You won't make a bedika.
Oh, here we're worried that you won't make the bedika.
Yeah, the whole problem is the question is you have to make a new bedika again. The bedika, the mandate to make the bedika is only midir Rabbanan. So Zakas Mir Le Shleimer, the Ari can go in Shaloi Bitel. Tosfos wants to learn that there's no bittel, and that's why the stakes are of a deraisa. So Akiva is asking me now. So Akiva, so now that we framed the shaila that according to Rashi it's a subject Rabbanan, and according to Tosfos it's a subject deraisa. So your shaila is why would we be makel in this case because it's the shaila of a deraisa?
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know
What's
the answer.
the
We have to see the Gemara weiter why you would be makel. We understand why you don't go basaroiv if it's kavua. So far, all we really did was a chumrah that normally you go basaroiv, but when it's a kavua, you have to be machmer and you say it's mechza mechza. That's good. The first kula that we really encountered was this case, and we have to see how it plays out. I don't know the answer yet, but I'm sure.
What's the classic case then of a suffix d'oraisa? Because at any time,
the case of deraisa is the case of the meat. You went into a store, you don't know which store you went into, and you don't know if you bought tray for the meat or if you bought kosher meat. So suffix deraisa l'chumrah.
Now, so it's not a chaylev and shuman. I thought that you ate one of them, you consumed one of them,
Well,
and
no,
you're
you
not
want
sure.
to know if you're allowed to eat them. Baruch Hashem, you didn't eat it yet. You bought this meat, and you don't know if you're allowed to use it or not. Can you assume it's kosher, or must you be choshish that it's treif?
And that's a suffix d'oraisa.
Yeah, it's an isur deraisa to eat basar nevela. It's an isur deraisa to eat basar treif.
I thought it's if you have chaylev and shuman in front of you and you ate one of them already, you're not sure which one you ate. So
That's
therefore,
an asham toli. To bring an asham toli, there had to have been isur here, and then at the suffix if you were over on the isur, and then that's when you would bring an asham toli. But l'gabe suffix isur as to whether or not you're allowed to eat something, even if there's only one piece of meat here, it's also classified as a suffix deraisa. By Nashim Tali, the Gemara teaches us that there had to have been Huchzak Isser. There had to have been Isser here, and now you have a suffix what you ate. But if there's a suffix halal, if there was Isser here, then you might not have to bring a Nashim Tali. But it's still a suffix Isser that you're not allowed to eat it.
and therefore here what you're saying is good. Here there's no huchzak isser.
There is no Huchzak Isser, but we have a suffix. So if it's a suffix, it's usher to eat the meat.
That's what I used to know.
So normally you go basarayv. If the meat was found on the floor, you can assume it came out of a kosher store. But if you went into a store, to purchase it and you don't know which store you went into, then it would be usher for you to eat, and we have to treat it like a 50-50 suffix. Okay, I guess we're going to stop here at 7 if we're going to make it to shul. We got to stop. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Koyach.